Hello, everybody. It's George from Ireland. Well, thank you for coming back to my channel. This is about the poisoning of Alexei Navalny, who died just over 2 years ago. It was early February 2026. A true Russian hero who gave his life for his people, who was a corporate lawyer, could have been very wealthy. Someone as gifted as him, he could have risen to the top of the regime, but he didn't do that. He gave all that to live modestly, to be arrested constantly, to be harassed, and so on. He knew he was being followed. He was getting hate mail, getting death threats, and stuff like that. And then he was poisoned on a plane in Russia. And then the pilot launched an emergency landing. And then he was in the hospital, and Angela Merkel phoned up. She had a good rapport with Putin, the Chancellor of Germany, and managed to persuade Putin to allow Navalny to be flown to Germany, where his life was saved at Le Charité Hospital in Berlin. Surprising thing is why Putin did that. I suppose once Angela Merkel got on the phone to him, it's difficult to say no. And then this becomes a part of the alibi. The attempt to murder him with the poison hadn't worked immediately. So by allowing him to go ahead abroad for medical treatment, you say, clearly I wasn't trying to kill him, otherwise I wouldn't have let him out. And correctly calculating that Navalny would eventually return, which he did in 2021. Even though he was warned not to, he'd probably get a long prison sentence, arrested immediately, had this grossly unfair trial at kangaroo court. I've read his autobiography, Patriot, and he really was a patriot, trying to build a brighter future for Russians with democracy, with an end to corruption. You think of the hundreds of billions of dollars stolen by Putin and his cronies. In addition to that, the hundreds of billions of dollars wasted on these wars of aggression, or they've lost through sanctions. And, Russia should be the richest country in the world. It really should be the richest, with 18 million square kilometers, with so much in terms of mineral resources. I don't just mean oil, gas, and coal, but I mean every mineral you can think of, precious metals, non-precious metals, as well as huge amounts of fertile farmland, the potential for solar power, for hydroelectric power, and so on is almost endless. And yet, a lot of this isn't harnessed. When it is, it's squandered. And it just goes to a minuscule percentage of the population, a microscopically small percent of the population, and often salted away in bank accounts there. So he had the gallantry to expose this, to tell the truth the way it is. A highly intelligent person, someone who's morally upstanding, who was morally courageous as well as physically courageous, who instead of living in the lap of luxury, ended up living in really inhumane conditions in a cell where he was murdered. No surprise there then. And, I'm filled with admiration. Words fail me for the way that I salute his bravery. He willingly, almost eagerly laid down his life for his people. But you have to think, what about his wife? What about his daughter and his son? Didn't they need him? Was the sacrifice too great? And it was a cold courage. He didn't rush into battle. No, he maintained this courage for decades. He had many, many chances to escape, to save himself, and he didn't do it. Wow. So I take my hat off from him. One day he will be honored by a huge statue in the middle of Moscow when Russia is free. So there he was, a seemingly healthy sort of 46-year-old man who suddenly collapses walking along through the courtyard of the prison, and no adequate explanation of his death. But anyway, so some examples were taken from his body. I don't know. Does that mean his hair, tissue samples, or whatever? And it showed that what was present was epibetadine. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Unusual and very, very strong toxin. And it occurs in the skin of these dart frogs, which are native to South America, and they're not found in Russia. So we know that Putin likes to poison people, and his organization, the FSB, before that the KGB, like to poison people at home and abroad. One of their favorite things to do. There was the Skripal poisoning, the Litvinenko poisoning, and possibly other suspicious deaths in the United Kingdom alone. There was that Georgian billionaire who died very suddenly in Leatherhead. This about 12 years ago. That's the other guy, Perepelichny, who died in Weybridge, a few years ago, going for a jog, a healthy 44-year-old guy, and so on. And some people think that these were suspicious deaths. So that's why Putin, when he has dinners in public, a full meal is served him and he doesn't eat or drink anything because he's so worried about poison. Even as his bodyguards, he controls the kitchen or whatever. I wonder if he has tasters to see that it's not actually poison what he's consuming. Anyway, So it's only come out now, and that was independently analysed by laboratories abroad. I'm not sure which European laboratories looked into it. So the toxin effect, it paralyzes the person, and respiration closes down, and that's how he was reported to have died. He collapsed, and then he stopped breathing. So the foreign ministries of the Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, they issued a joint statement about that. So lots of other countries, including Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, have said there needs to be a full and transparent international investigation. Obviously, you can't trust a word the Russian government says. And so the regime even tried to threaten his mother to have a private funeral. Then it was flooded with plainclothes FSB at his funeral, tried to hurry it up and so on, because it didn't want it to be an opposition demonstration. So it's monstrous. You just see the wanton cruelty of the Putin regime. A defenseless, harmless man who only ever tried to help people, to save people, to restore freedom and justice to Russia. He paid with his life for his ideals. He was willing to risk his hide for his platitudes. How on earth did this frog poison get into his body? I mean, I don't know whether it was injected into him, whether he was put in his food or whatever. And why did they choose that particular one? Maybe they thought it was almost undetectable, something like that. But I'm not sure what samples they've got. Now, one of the problems is, why is it only announced now, 2 years later? Don't know what examples were taken, how they're smuggled out of Russia, and to which laboratories they're given. So that does somewhat undermine the credibility that it wasn't said sooner. Anyway, so the Kremlin, surprise, surprise, said that this is nonsense, that there is no basis to this, and this is just prejudice. This is a disinformation campaign. The Russian regime, which lies more than anybody else. Okay, so there we go. Apparently, it's looked at by several different laboratories, and they tested it. They want to be sure this is true. It came out just towards the end of the Munich Security Conference. And Navalny's wife, she's not gone back to Russia. His daughter and son are abroad for their own safety. His daughter speaks flawless English, is studying in the United States. Well, anyway, that's an awful pity that he suffered this, and he won't be the last one to suffer this kind of thing. So that's why it's very sad. I like Russia. The plain Russians I liked. I really would like to go back there, but it's just completely unsafe, even for a nobody like me. Telling the plain truth, trying to speak up for human rights is very, very dangerous. You could find yourself in the isolator, a prison cell which is 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters, 24 to 23 hours a day and stuff like that. So that is Putin's barbaric, sadistic regime. And they've used chemical weapons in Syria at a huge scale. And they've lied and lied and lied about it. And all the massacres that his ally Assad carried out, he lied and lied and lied about it. All the mass graves have been shown. All the archives have been opened. All the documentation. Putin knew about all this. The use of various gases against civilians in Syria that Putin's forces were doing directly, and sometimes they were giving the poisons to Assad's forces. So poison is one of their favorite methods to murder people, despite being a flagrant breach of various international conventions against chemical weapons, which Russia is a signatory and has indeed ratified. Thanks for watching my channel. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, donate to PayPal, georgecallan7@gmail.com. Goodbye.